Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Brandley.
And I'm Alicia Coakley.
Every member of the church has a story to share, one that can instill faith, invite growth, and inspire others.
On today's episode, we're going to hear how a fun adventure, a wrong turn, and a family's worst nightmare gave one man a deeper love for life and brought him closer to the Savior. Welcome to Latter-day Lights. Hey, welcome everyone. Scott and I are super excited to have the ever incredible Kaden Laga joining us today. Kaden, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and hello to everyone listening.
So Kaden and his cute wife, they actually came all the way out to Podunk, Little Elko, and they shared their story, this story that you guys are going to hear today. They shared it for a youth fireside, and I'm telling you, I was laughing, I was crying, I was stressed out. I mean, you name the emotion, I was pretty much feeling it. It was definitely an unforgettable story, to say the least, and I'm really excited that you guys are going to be able to hear him today. So it was great.
So, we're all kind of on the edge waiting to hear this amazing story that Alicia heard at this fireside. But before we get into that, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Kaden Laga. I've got a son who's 2.5 years old and another son on the way. Um, I grew up in rural Idaho, a little town called Robin, population 100 and not growing, regressing. So I grew up in, yeah, I grew up on a little hobby farm, talking to cows, and now here I am on a podcast talking to real people, what I always dreamed of growing up. So, but anyways, yeah. So I live in Orem, Utah, and I was telling Scott before we started, I do digital advertising. That's my job. And so, yeah, we're just happy in Orem. We bought a home a couple years ago and have been doing massive renovations to it. We moved some stairs last summer, so we are ripping out walls and moving plumbing, and that's kind of our life right now is work, that, and kids. But anyways, when we do play, we'll play pickleball or my wife and we both will play video games together. Huge hikers, climbers. So yeah.
That sounds like a fun, busy life.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel your pain when it comes to renovations, especially with kids. It's not fun trying to live in a home and renovate and have children around. You have my prayers.
Yes. The worst of it is over, hopefully. So thank you.
Well, with that, you mentioned hiking. Hiking is definitely a big part of this story today. Do you want to go ahead and kind of tell us a little bit of, how did this story all begin? Why don't you go ahead and start sharing with us?
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up riding horses and backpacking. I go on a annual horse trip with my dad since being away from home. So I'll go up and we'll do a ride. Before we started having kids, my wife came with us a few times, and now it generally is just me and him. This particular trip, it was me and him, my little brother and little sister. He lives up in Montana, so we ride in the Bitterroot Wilderness area, which is the largest wilderness area out in the U.S. outside of Alaska. So it's a massive, you drive in on dirt roads, for a long time before you even get to the trailhead, and then from there you're riding. We ride old fire maintenance trails, so it is pretty common to run into no one on our travels, because it's the deep backwoods. So anyway, on this particular trip, I had a brother who had a horse go lame on day 3. And we had to leave him on the trail. The horse would no longer move. So I set off on foot ahead of everyone else while they finished lunch so we could hopefully make it to the car that night. We were going to alternate people as we walked. there's no clear intersections or things like that, and it's not uncommon to lose the trail for about 100 yards. And I went and could not see the main trail that we were on, but could see the turn, and turned off on the turn. It followed the same direction. It made navigational sense. But after following it down for a ways, the trail had petered out, and I was kind of slowly pursuing it and ended up unable to find the trail. And with the blessing of hindsight, I can tell you I did go back a year after. And when you're on foot, you cannot see the main trail. You can only see the side trail. And my dad and I went on foot. And when we tried to navigate back, knowing we would get lost, we also could not find the trail because of the slope of the hill or something. You could see it going down. You couldn't see it going back up. But anyway, so we went back and we covered up that trail so no one else would make the same mistake. But that's how I ended up there. I ended up on the side of the mountain on foot. 50 miles at least from civilization, on top of a mountain ridge. Knowing by the I was a few hours down the path and realized that they had long since passed me, and my chances of catching up with them were pretty slim.
So at this point, are you getting concerned? Like, is it getting dark? Are you feeling like you're lost, or?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, so it had been raining. It had been raining all day. It was getting a little foggy, and I knew that I was lost. And my like pretty much first or second thought was, "Oh, I'm lost, and I'm going to die," because I'm literally adrift in the middle of the ocean. Like it is like I'm next to nothing. Like basically, and if someone is listening and they've hiked in Utah, this is not like Utah mountains where you just need to find the sounds of the cars. Like this is mountain ridge, mountain ridge, mountain ridge, mountain ridge in every direction. And if you can't get on the trail, even if you get on the trail, if you get on the trail and you don't know how, and luckily I had memorized the map, so I knew what the right trail was and roughly where I was in space. But really, if you do not have that, your ability to use some point of reference to get back to civilization is nil. And once again, even if I got back to the trailhead, there were no other cars at that trailhead. So I would have had to have walked a great distance down even a road in hopes to run into someone. So I was, like I said, it was like, oh, people die in the woods, and this year it's me. Like that
Wow.
was, I was there. Like it was, the weight of the situation was immediately evident.
So did you have anything like a backpack?
No, so because the intention was to switch off, and because we were horse packing, I didn't have a backpack. I had one granola bar, a water bottle that was a quarter filled with some filtered water, and I had a rain slicker and a sweater on, which probably saved my life. But that was it. That is what I had on.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you're lost. You're convinced at this point that there's just no hope, right? What's that first night like? What happens next?
Yeah. So yeah, I have this feeling, like what I had detailed, and then I was felt peace. I felt peace, and I thought, wow, this is a beautiful place to die. I'm okay. I'm okay. And then I thought, because my wife was pregnant with my first son at this point, and then I went, no, actually, that's not an option. You don't get to be peaceful with death. You have to go out kicking and screaming, because you don't have the luxury of leaving your son to be raised by a single mom. Like you owe it to them. You know what I mean? To shape up and figure it out. Use your brain and find a way to get out of here. And so then I went, okay, I've got to find a way to get back on this trail. I need to, so and it's kind of, it starts to get a little more rainy, a little drippy. And so I just am walking this ridge until I hit a landmark I don't recognize. Then I'm walking the other way. I'm trying to figure out how I lost the trail, and I push it right up until I lose sunlight. And then I pulled together some logs to shelter me from the wind because I'm on top of a ridge. Dug a little hole. Took my pants, shoes, and socks off because they were wet, from walking around after everything's rained. All the bushes are wet that I'm walking around in. Tuck it into my jacket and roost there for the night. And that night was probably the most dangerous night of all the nights. I was so cold, so cold. I mean, you just uncontrollable shivering. Rain. It started to rain, and I was underneath a tree, but I'd still kind of get some rain on me, and I was in and out. I would probably only sleep, I don't know, but it felt like probably 15 minutes, and I was waking up every 15 minutes or so, just waiting for the sun to come out so that I could dry off.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, that the first night was pretty bleak.
So, Kaden, how cold do you think it got that night? I mean, you're in Montana, obviously, so it's not like it's ever really warm, right?
It was cold enough that my socks were frozen in the morning,
Gosh.
but I don't think so cold that it was. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it was like
Mm-hmm.
-20 or something like that.
Right, right, right,
These weren't like winter conditions, but
right.
like I said, cold enough that my socks were frozen.
So you said night. So that how long were you lost?
I was lost for 5 days. For 5 days, I was lost in the Bitterroot Wilderness.
Okay. So what happens the next day when you wake up? What do you do from that point?
Yep. So the next day, and I'm feeling, I'm starting to feel the, lack of, I'm feeling a little weak. I've already done a lot of hiking. I don't have much food. I'm kind of rationing off this granola bar slowly, you know, nibbling on it. We would have been up in the woods at this point by 3 days, and then this would have been the third night, but my first night lost. So I do another round on the ridge to try and see if I can figure out how to get back to the main trail. It's unsuccessful, and I don't have enough water to last me for very long. You can survive 3 days without water before you perish. I knew I did kind of a psych profile of my dad, and I said he will come back looking for me. He'll spend a whole day looking for me, and then it's going to take him a day to come get back out. And then I don't know how long it's going to take for help to come. And if they don't come via helicopter, they will not see me. So I made the decision, against all of my Boy Scout training, to move. And whether that's the right decision or wrong decision, I don't really care to discuss. There's an argument made for both. But
Mm-hmm.
I also decided, because my strategy was to move, and there was a landmark I saw that I thought was where I was at. It was a little rocky outcropping on a big ridge that I was pretty sure was where we had lunch. So I decided to shoot for that as a landmark, as opposed to trying to find this trail that I wasn't able to find. And so I decided, if my strategy is to move, I need to make sure I can get water, and I also need to take sustenance as I find it. I have been in those woods a fair bit, so I knew a few things that were safe to eat: grasshoppers, huckleberries, and thimbleberries. Thimbleberries is like a wild raspberry. It's very seedy. So anyways, whenever I would see one of those, I would eat it. So I ate a grasshopper the first day because I was able to catch one up on the ridge. And then I
Yum.
started taking huckleberries. I happened to have a little plastic bag. I would eat my fill, and then I would fill up the bag with huckleberries so I'd have stuff. Pretty much turn into a little jam because it's just a plastic bag in my pocket.
Oh,
Sun comes out. It's really heated. I do a probably, yeah, it was a pretty dangerous descent down this ridge. It was not sheer, but it was only a few degrees away from being sheer. So I shimmied my way down this ridge, and then started climbing up to where I thought this landmark was. And then that night I slept, and I had hit a river. So I, I drank my fill, and then I headed up this to try and get to this landmark. Lost my water bottle in the process. It was really deep bush. And so, so I slept on the side of the ridge that night. And then I'd get cold at night, and after the first night, because it was really hot the next day after that rainy day, all my stuff was dry. So that wasn't a problem, but I would move when I was cold. I would move or hit rocks together to try and start a fire, or rub sticks together, something to just keep my body heat up. So anyways, I climbed up this ridge, and then the next day I finally summited it, got to the top, realized that this was not the right rock. So I was resting, and then there were helicopters that emerged. So this is after night 2. So that means that it kind of depends how you say it. It's either day 2 or day 3, depending on how you cut it.
Mm-hmm.
And the helicopters are flying around. One even flies over the ridge that I was on just the night prior. So that's why I say it's really a matter of debate whether I should have moved or not,
Right.
but I did spend all afternoon trying to flag down these helicopters, and had one fly so close over my head that I could read its serial number.
Oh my gosh.
And then it turned, and then it flew away.
Oh.
So maybe they would have seen me on that ridge. Maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. That's the thing I will never know. And people ask me, when you saw that helicopter, when that happened, was that just like, so soul crushing? And honestly, it was relieving, because I went, that I cannot count on external help, because I'm in the survival mindset, right? Which is a different mindset than your day-to-day mindset. I can't count on someone saving me, so I need to stay sharp, and I need to, I need to figure this out on my own. And also, because I'd been up on that ridge for almost 24 hours, I was starting to feel a little dehydrated from all the hiking. I didn't have my water bottle, and so I was relieved I could go back down to the river and follow it. So at this point, I decided to change how I was thinking about things. I said my goal is to get out of here in 1 month. And so I will head in the direction of the main highway, and I will try and follow these rivers as much as I can to get there, because that's a source of water. There tend to be more food around it. And I'm going to just take my time and not make any rush decisions. Like I'm not going to climb another mountain like I did today and wear myself out. Like I have to take my time. And the fatigue is real. The adrenaline is definitely real. And I definitely felt angels lifting my feet as I moved. Like there were times where it felt like my job was to lift my foot up, and they would bring it forward. I mean, it was really a slow, methodical, but I definitely had felt that all along. And the other interesting thing about this is, talking more about the spiritual aspect, is, the first day, and really throughout, I was very prayerful. And I'm someone who tends to have a pretty good conversations with God. I feel like I'm able to have back and forth conversations with him, typically. Silence. Just silence. And the few answers I did get were, hey, like, whatever you think.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm not trying to pick what school to go to, God. I'm trying to survive. So maybe a little bit more specific of an answer would be helpful. But I'm actually pretty grateful for it. I think that was part of the experience.
Got a quick question for you. So, you mentioned how Heavenly Father just kind of was like, okay, whatever you want to do. Do you feel like that was almost, I mean, looking back now, of course it would be super frustrating in the moment, but looking back now, does it make you feel a little more confident? Like, wow, Heavenly Father really trusted me. Like he really trusted me to be able to get through this, and to be able to keep my wits about me, and to not lose faith in what was going on.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I don't know. I don't, in the moment, even I was not too angry, because I mean, I
Nice.
think, I don't know, when you have enough experiences with God, um, you just kind of go like, whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
if you want to be silent, that's for a reason. And I, at some point, I'm going to figure that out.
So you don't feel that your faith was really wavering in God or anything. What about your family? Like what was going on with them at the time, especially your poor pregnant wife? You know, kind of give us a little glimpse into what was happening with them and
My wife, as you know, Alicia, from the fireside, definitely had much stronger spiritual revelation of, he's okay, he's going to make it out of this, despite all logic. She felt very strongly. And for me, kind of like I was telling you at the fireside, Alicia, I was uncertain if God's silence was because this was a great learning opportunity for me, or if it really didn't matter because his plan was for me to die, and I was fine with either outcome, but I knew that I needed to strive to survive for the sake of my son, and because that was my duty. You know what I mean? So yeah, and yeah, so and then your other question, looking back, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know all the reasons. I I I think it's conceivable. Like, I will say, because he behaved in that way, um, I feel a lot more ownership of that experience, if that makes sense. Like, it
mm-hmm,
feels like it's mine. You know what
mm-hmm,
I mean?
yeah,
And I don't know if I would have felt as strongly without. And I don't know for sure if that's true, but thinking about that, that's at least a thought that I've had. But beyond that, I don't know all the reasons why. So does that answer your question?
it does, yeah.
Well, and that's interesting too because if you got rescued on day one, you wouldn't have the 5 days of experiences to reflect on, and the lessons maybe that you've learned from those other days to reflect on for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, 5 days is a much more powerful anecdote than one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Because yeah, I did a final accounting with God, because I didn't know the outcome, what the ultimate outcome would be. So I checked in with him and made sure we were good. And I also had a really cool thought where I said, if there ever was a time to freak out or admit to myself that I've been deluding myself that there's a God that's real, this would be the time. This would be the time to freak out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and that was really awesome to have that moment. Where it's like, yeah, if you don't believe in this, this would be the time to admit that and flail wildly and try and you know
Right.
kick against the pricks,
Yeah.
and to stop and think and ponder on that and say no, even looking death in the face, I'm good, I'm confident, and I'm feeling good with any outcome, um because through God, life, death, you know doesn't really matter, really. you know and so, yeah. So do you want me to continue recounting just the rest of the days?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And the next couple ones will fly a little bit faster, because I've got a 1 month plan in mind. So it's slow and
Okay.
steady. I follow a river down. I cut across a ridge. I get really tired on what would be day 3, and so I spend most of the late afternoon and evening just on a ridge, sleeping on this ridge, um, getting water. I can hear the helicopters several ridges over now because I'm a ways away from them. Sitting there, wake up in the morning and hear a mountain lion on the other side, which is horrifying.
Oh,
Um,
Mm.
I'm more scared of mountain lions than bears. I don't know if that's a warranted fear, but they scare me way more than bears. And then I continued on, ended up taking a nap, and woke up to the sound of a bear sniffing. And I never looked back to see the bear. I didn't want to see him. But it was a very unmistakable sound. And I don't know. Maybe I dreamed it. I'm really not sure. Because, like I said, I didn't look back to verify, but I just stood up and continued on my journey. Um, and then day 4, late afternoon, I come, because I had followed this river, I cut across this ridge so I was going the right direction because this river started to go the wrong direction. So I cut across a ridge, I see another branch of that river going down, I cut down, I say, this is a pretty big river. I bet you there's a trail. And when I got down there was indeed a trail, and there were human footprints on the trail. And if there were human footprints, that meant I was within, walking distance, right, of a decent trailhead that someone had been on at least in the last couple days. So I was overjoyed. I was skipping. There was a baby duck, and I would just, hey, baby duck. And I thought, I thought, oh, God doesn't want me to die. He wants me to live. This is great. What a great outcome, because this is the outcome that I want. And so anyways, I kept walking, and then a massive storm rolled in, and it could have been in a cartoon. It was so dramatic. I saw lightning. So I'm in a valley now, walking next to the river, and there's all these trees. The wind is blowing, and the trees are swaying back and forth. Trees are falling down from the wind. These old dead trees, and I'm in the middle of, a thicket of these. So I'm kind of, and at this point, my shoes are blown out. My ankles are in great pain from all the hiking and stuff. So I'm kind of hobbling, through when there's a tree that's really swaying. And then to the right of me, lightning strikes the top of this ridge. And I kid you not, I see rocks tumbling down this mountainous ridge from this lightning strike. And and at this point, I'm laughing because it's just funny. It really is just funny, because I'm just like, what a dramatic send off. Like, why, why is it like this? Like, I don't know. It was just funny. It was kind of fun. So anyways, I just kept moving, because I didn't want to get squashed by a tree. I got to a place where there weren't trees. The storm calmed down. I kept moving. I was so excited at the prospect of hitting a trailhead that I pushed it a little too hard. I tried to nap a few hours before the sun went down, so I got some good rest before it got too cold to sleep. And I went till about the sun was about to go down, so I didn't get much rest. And so then I got up, and because I was on a trail and I was cold, I decided I was just going to inch along this trail, being very cautious to not lose the trail. I was like, I can make it 100 feet, and that's fine. I need to move for my warmth, and I might as well make a little bit of progress while I'm trying to keep warm. So I just had a little bit of moonlight shining through the trees, and so I just was inching my way down this trail. And then at 2 a.m., I saw a light shining through the trees, not from above, not moon, shining right at me. And once again, I'm in great spirits because I'm on a trail. I know I'm heading the right direction, and now I've had this comical, cartoonish storm, and now there's a light shining at me, and I'm serious. My thought was aliens. Why not? Why not? Like, God is giving me this great tour of things before he kills me in some kind of insane, like, there's just this, it no longer makes any sense, like, this is cartoon land, and now there's aliens here. And so anyways, I decided to cautiously approach, and what it was actually a headlamp. And it was shining. They had kept the headlamp on, and there were animals moving around. And so I thought it was a trail crew that was coming through. And if you work on a trail crew in bear country, you're probably a pretty cautious person. And I'm walking around at 2 a.m. So I keep safe distance and call out, and say, hello, I need help, I'm lost. And then out pops Robin and Brett, people I'd never met, but who knew my parents who were out looking for me. And so, then I need help, I'm lost. And she goes, are you Kaden? I said, yeah, I'm Kaden, that's me. And she runs out, no shoes on, and we just hug. I mean, I haven't seen anyone. I've barely talked in the last couple days. My voice is all dry. It's weird to say words out loud, And it's just this huge, huge. We're together. Everything's gonna be okay. They've got these high tech gadgets that they bought so that you can communicate while you're in the woods, using like satellite. It's like a satellite phone. It can send out a little message. They send a message and say that I'm okay. There's a huge rejoicing at my house. I found out, when they find out. And yeah, so I'm there. They've got food. I'm very carefully eating it to not expand my stomach too quickly. And then, and this is, I want to share this detail because it was really odd. So I'm safe. I have a blanket to sleep under. I'm in here with people. I've had food. I'm overjoyed. And then and this is, I've learned now is quite common. My entire body, all the adrenaline and everything caught up with it because my body felt relief. My heart was palpitating. I was red hot, ice cold. And I thought I was having a heart attack. I mean, it was such a strange, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, once again, this is how I die in the arms of someone saving me. I die of like a heart attack. Like, it was the most peculiar, but yeah, it's just your body is finally relaxing. My bowels started working again, and all these functions that return because you're no longer in this heightened state of nonstop fight or flight. But that was terrifying, honestly, because it seemed like such a, of all the ways to die, I sure didn't want to die of a heart attack in the tent of my rescuers.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyways, I didn't die. It was fine. And so yeah, we packed up. They had horses, and we made it out. We've got to the trailhead. There was search and rescue there with a helicopter. They flew me to an airport where I was reunited with my family like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And yeah, the rest is history.
That's amazing, man. What a story. So, have you gone and done other firesides? Is that something you do now on the weekends? Go share your story, or?
I haven't. I think I did one for my stake, and then I did the one in Elko, and I haven't done any others. The reason for that most likely is I got some really good advice when I came off, where they said, don't be in a big rush to tell your story. And I realized that what had happened to me was really special, and so I didn't want it to turn into a party trick. And also, there was a lot to unpack. I needed to understand what does this mean to me, and what, I needed to recall the events. I needed to heal from it. I needed to relearn how to work, because once you've accepted death and then you have to go back and deal with people being upset about mundane things, like, you kind of have to change your way of doing life. And so I just told everyone, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it for 1 year, even though, even at the time, it was a really awesome and joyous thing. I didn't want to tell the story. I didn't want my story to change. I didn't want to. So I did, I talked to the news outlets. I just did one interview. Fox News wanted me on live. I did that one. And after that, nothing. And I didn't even do my first fireside till well after a year passed, just so I could write things down, think about it, And it is probably the most, I mean, if ever there was an alternate universe where I could choose to have that not happen to me, I would never choose it. I would choose to have it happen every time. It has been there's a quote. Every man has two lives, and the second life starts when you realize you only have one. And the additional, I loved life before, but my lust for life and my willingness to take risks, to tell people I love them, to have meaningful experiences, to do things that I think are worthwhile, is tenfold, you know. And so it's just been such a enriching experience.
I really liked how your advice was not to rush right away, right? And of course this show, and it sounds weird, right? Because this show is all about sharing our stories. It's all about sharing those stories, those experiences that maybe aren't so pretty. Some of them have happy, wonderful endings like yours, but some of the stories we share, they're heartbreaking. They're really painful, and I think that there is a balance in when to share your story and with whom to share your story with, right? I think about the scriptures with, when we were instructed not to cast our swine before our pearls before swine, right? And I think that's so true, because I think some people, they might have and maybe you got this, maybe you didn't, been very like, well, why didn't you do this? Well, if I were you, I would have done that, right? Everyone has an opinion on how things should have gone and what you should have done better and what your rescuer should have done or whatever else. And so I think sometimes just sitting in that and like you said, really reflecting on it, healing from it, letting your relationship with your Heavenly Father build because of it, understanding just how much He was there in that whole experience, and not belittling it is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But now obviously you're open to sharing your story, right? And obviously don't want to go out and do it frivolously all the time. But do you feel
Sure.
like in going through that process of healing and reflection and being at the place where you are now, do you feel like this is an experience that when you share it, it does it grow your testimony more? Does it solidify it? Do you get to see any of those ripples in your sharing your testimony and
Mm,
how it affects other people's lives?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think so. Um, it is such a gift. It's just strange to think about it like that, but it really is such a gift that Heavenly Father chose to give to me. Um, and I love giving it away. And like you said, I'm selective, you know, but also it's a feeling thing. I've gotten into it on a few people on flights. The person sitting next to me, we're talking about life and what makes life worth living, and we're talking about that, and some people I don't talk about it ever with, who even people I interact with a lot, because it just doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel, and it's not like, oh, they're a bad person, or you know what I mean. That's not what I'm saying. But it's just like, this isn't what you need to hear, and my attitude can be seen as a little cavalier, maybe a little calloused, and it probably is to a certain extent, just because I'm a very closely acquainted with death, and now other things going on in my life, other loved ones facing death. It's something I'm very comfortable with, and I can totally understand how that makes some people uncomfortable.
Right.
So, anyway, so I'm selective who I share it with, but I feel like every time I have shared it, and when I'm doing it prayerfully and carefully and thinking, is this really what, what level do I really want to talk about this with this person? Um, but it almost always not only is testimony enlarging for me and for them, but also you just grow so close with that person because you share something so sweet and sensitive of
Right.
yourself, and you feel that much closer together.
Yeah. So on my side, something that I think a lot of people find hard to do nowadays is to have gratitude. Life just seems, they almost like expect a certain level standard of living, or they have certain expectations, and they're just not grateful for the things that they have. So how did this experience help you have more gratitude or for what you have?
Yeah, that's a great question. In all honesty, I don't think it helped me have gratitude, but I do think because I had an attitude of gratitude, I see it as a blessing instead of a curse, and was able to have a, keep my wits about me too out there, So I don't know if it helped me build gratitude, but certainly I felt gratitude throughout. Um, and I think that was a huge boon and a blessing to me. But I love what you said about gratitude and this expectation of that life ought to be a certain way. There's a saying, right, that we hear said, oftentimes outside of the church. Why do bad things happen to good people? Or
Right.
or why did this happen to me? I'm so, I'm trying, or I'm whatever. And I have two challenges with that. Number one is, who says you're good? I think we're all trying to be good. I'm not good. I don't know if I've met someone who's good. I think we're all trying. But that kind of joke aside, I think the second thing, which is, aren't you just grateful that it's not happening until now? It's a small perspective
Mm,
shift, but it's like, oh no, why am I in financial ruin? Or was it, oh, thank heavens, I was in financial gain at some point. Some
yeah.
people are never. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Hmm.
Oh no, I have a loved one who's passing away. Well, aren't you so grateful they didn't pass away 10 years ago? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, we
Hmm.
assume that there's this expectation that life will go in an upwards trajectory. Everyone we love will never face massive hardships. We'll
Yeah.
never lose someone we love. And we're deluding ourselves, because that's
Hmm.
never been. Death is inevitable, right? I think death is the easiest thing. As soon as we're born, we're programmed to die. Like, death is coming, and yet we act so surprised when it happens. Um, but it's a part of life, and really we should be grateful just for the time we have, and anyways. So I love that, Scott. I totally agree with you on that.
So I think what you had said earlier about how some people might view you as callous or cavalier because you've you've experienced this very real um, face with your mortality, right? And and so the way that you view death is a little more of a, it is what it is, right? And I love that your perspective shifts from that, gosh, this is happening too soon, to wow, I'm so thankful that it didn't happen sooner. One of the things that we talked about on this show in one of our earlier episodes was when I lost my brother. I lost him a few years ago, and he was only 33. He had a wife and he had 5 kids at home, and they were all between the ages of 3 and 16 at the time. And so um, that was just awful. Definitely not something that I
I'm so
want
sorry
to
to hear
go
that.
through again. Thank you. But I look back at all of the lessons that I've learned, since then, and the growth that's happened. And I too have that same attitude of like, it hurts my heart that I know that other people are going to be hurting whenever they have to face something um, so permanent, right? Like with death or an illness maybe that is going to completely affect your life, or a physical disability or whatever. But at the same time, I just think to myself, there's so many things that you can learn and grow and see from all of this, and I'm
Mm,
so grateful that in my life I've been able to really have that plan of happiness be cemented into my faith, where we know, right? All of this stuff is just to help us to become more like our Heavenly Father. All of this stuff is so minute, all the things that stress us
yeah.
out and worry us. It's such a small blip in our timeline, because our timeline's eternal. We're going to be able um, to have so many more wonderful things. The scale for us is definitely going to be tipped in our favor,
Mm,
right? In the end. And it's just, we just have to get through this life the best way that we can, right? So Not so much a question, more
I
just a
love that.
statement.
Thanks
But
for sharing.
yeah.
No, thanks for sharing though. I love that.
So, what are some of the other things that you learned, in your reflection and whatnot? Were your big
Yeah.
takeaways from this?
I'll share the big three. I'll share the big three, and I'll do them in order I don't know. I'm going to share them in this order. Um, so number one, I got a lot of terrible messages when I got back off the mountain. People were upset about the horse. People felt like I didn't survive in the correct way. You know, some lady felt like I was running some kind of scam to try and get people to send us money for the search and rescue, and I was pocketing it. You know, people thought I got in a big fight with my dad, and I stormed off. People thought I went into the woods to commit suicide. You know, I mean, all these things people were saying about my experience, when literally I'm like, I just got lost and was trying to survive. I'm not trying to be a celebrity. I'm not even looking. I don't even know how you heard about this. You know, somehow the news caught this. Otherwise, this was kind of my thing. Like, why are you even talking about this? And people would send me, private messages. Someone sent me a message on Facebook. You really need to go and you need to make a post about all the mistakes you made because you're lucky to be alive. You know, very few people survive in that wilderness. You know, all that stuff. And I'm someone just like everyone else, because we're humans, who has had concerns about like, oh, should I create this? Should I say this? I have good intentions, but what if it's interpreted wrong? And after that, I was like, oh, it does not matter. I can innocently be trying to survive, and someone's got some hot take on that. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
at first I was like, I'm never going to say anything. I need to just keep to myself because people are awful. But then as I thought about it more, I went, no, do it for the people who care and expect the hate. Because if it
Yep.
can hate with something so innocent, if you're trying to, make this podcast, do something kind for someone, whatever, you're trying to do something, someone is going to have an issue with it. It really doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. And
Yeah.
assuming that has been so freeing, because now it's, well, what should I say for the right person instead of, oh, what shouldn't I say because I might
Mm-hmm.
offend or ostracize some group. So I need to make sure that I'm so careful with my speech, like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't share my perspective on death because someone might be really struggling and that might make them feel uncomfortable. Like, I've it's been a great anecdote to push that from my mind and just say, just do it. If you feel like you should do something, do it. Don't worry about the social repercussions because they're inevitable.
Yeah.
Just do what you think is the right thing to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's lesson number one. Lesson number two, I'm very grateful that when I thought about dying on that first day, I felt peace. And as I've thought more about it, I don't think that was a bad response. But if I was ever in a situation like that again, I would hope that I would go out kicking and screaming and say, "No, no, God, I'm having so much fun. Don't let me die. I don't want to die. I want to keep doing the stuff that I'm doing. Like, don't let me go." Not
Mm-hmm.
that I wanted to die. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But that it was like, oh, this is okay, and it is okay, right? It is okay, and it is inevitable. But I want to have such a thirst and lust for life that I don't want to go. That
Yeah.
I'm begging for another 5 years. Because I think, at least, especially for me, I was kind of always of the attitude of like, oh, I'm just preparing. I'm preparing for when I go step to the other side. Because this life is a time to prepare to meet God. But what I think we forget is it's a gift. And the way we prepare to meet God is that we get really into this gift. Because this is all we have right now. Our whole world, our whole job, that God has given us is to focus on this life and have fun and have meaningful relationships with people and build people up and build up his kingdom. And And if you're not having fun doing that, you're going to be really disappointed in the next life, because whatever we're creating here is what we're going to experience in the next life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's just drudgery and like, oh, I need to do this so I can do this, and that way God will like me and he'll let me come to heaven. Like, no, that's not how any of it works. This life is probably a whole lot like the next life. So why not have another five years with your loved ones, you know? So I have really been trying and continue to try. This is the hardest thing to try and figure out and stay really brave about, but it's always saying what gives my life and meaning, and am I surrounding myself with that, or am I taking the safe way? You know what I mean? Am I saying, oh, but I don't want to take any risks. I don't want to start a new venture. I don't want to start a new project. I don't want to do this because what if it fails and I'm going to waste all this time? And it's like, no, if it's fun and exciting to you and you think it's going to bring something positive to the world, do it. Just do it and fail miserably and learn from it, but have that experience, because that's the playground that we're in, you know? And it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I hold myself to a really high standard and I fall short constantly on this one. But it's one that I'm always trying to work on and do that. Really drink the nectar of life, you know,
Yeah.
straight from the source. Alicia, did you have a comment?
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of feel like in your second lesson, um, there's a quote by Andy Andrews. He's my favorite. One day I'm gonna have lunch with that guy, I swear. But he said worry is just imagination used in an uncreative way, and I'm like, it's so true. When we waste all of our time worrying in life, we don't get to experience it the way that you're describing. We don't get to live fully. We don't get to see all these blessings, right? That we're completely surrounded with. We don't get to experience that pure joy, right? That is meant for us from our Heavenly Father. And I
Yes.
love that you just said, this life is a gift, right? But it's more than that. It's like we don't just want to be like, oh, thanks. We want to use it. We want to use it so
Right.
much that it's tattered and torn, and we just got a little tiny thread of it left over when we go back to heaven and see our Heavenly Father, and we're just like, heck yeah, we did it all. We did everything we could think of, right? Like, we really want to use this gift and use it to our benefit, to the benefit of those around us, right? I just think I just loved it. You could just do this whole show and Scott and I could just say nothing. This is like
You're too
Yeah.
kind.
perfect. No. Oh.
So I have before you give your third point, yeah. So you're with fellow risk takers here. So we definitely appreciate your second point there. On your first point, I had a comment on that. So I just finished writing a book, and it's about faith. It's called Overcoming a Crisis of Faith. And I had a group of beta testers read my book. And I was surprised to find that not everybody liked it, right? Kind of like what your comment was. It's because some people already have their mind made up of the outcome that they want to see, and they don't want to believe, but they're looking for a reason not to believe. So I had to come up with that same conclusion where, you know what, I have to focus on the people that want to believe what I'm trying to share. And I just have to be okay that there's going to be people that aren't going to agree with me. But I have to focus on the people that I can change. So that's really cool that you brought that up. So why don't you give us your third point and we'll wrap it up.
All right, so my third and final point, and uh, God decided to start talking to me again once I was back in civilization. So I learned this really early on. The first Sunday back, um, is I was sitting in sacrament meeting, and I felt like I should go and read the passage about Lazarus, where God raises Lazarus from the dead. And as I read through it, it stood out to me that there were probably a lot of people who thought the miracle was that God raised Lazarus from the dead, and that the guy who was dead on the mortal life was now alive again in his mortal life. And that was the miracle. But that's not the miracle. That is just a anecdote, an example of the miracle that is available and will be given to all of us, which is that death has no sting. And Christ demonstrated that he even had power over death in life, in mortality. But it was just a demonstration. The real miracle is that death is not a thing. The permanent death does not exist. And so whether we're on this side of the veil or the other, it's the same. If I would have lived, what a great miracle. Because I lived, I should say, because I did live.
Right.
Because I lived, what a great miracle. But if I would have died, what a great miracle. Because I'm going to live again, and that's promised to me. And so the stakes are so low, the stakes are so low. Death is not a thing. Man, that's beautiful, and I'm so grateful to know that, to believe that, and especially that it's real, that Christ died and rose again so that we all could,
Right.
and now kind of going back to the point too, what am I doing with that? You know what I mean? Am I so worried about rising again that I'm not bothering to live this first life, But yeah, that's my third one.
I love that.
Awesome.
Kaden, you're amazing. This whole experience and the lessons that you've taken away from it, it's just absolutely incredible. And I think that you definitely have a lot of good that you can do, not just with that experience, but other ones that I'm sure that you've had, things that you're coming up on, right? Things that are going to be happening in your future. Definitely a huge inspiration to me. I'm super thankful that you shared your story here in Elko, because I have 2 teenage boys and they couldn't stop talking about it. They're kind of in that emo teenage stage where they're like, oh, church. But they came away from your story and they were just like, man, that was awesome. What would you do, Mom? And I was like, I don't even want to think about what I would do if one of you guys were lost. I mean, I don't think I could eat a cricket. I'm just going to say, or grasshopper. I don't know if I could do it. Which, I'm curious, totally off the topic, but what does that taste like?
It's like unbuttered popcorn.
Really?
It's pretty tasteless, and then the texture is the texture is definitely like popcorn, but the taste is unremarkable, So, but anyways,
Okay.
you can try it at home, Alicia, right in your backyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can find a little hopper.
No, I think I'm good. Thank you, though.
Thank you for being an inspiration and for being willing to share and inspire other people. I know you've inspired us, and just we're grateful that you're on the show and that you are willing to share your light and share your story with others.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
It was an absolute pleasure. And I'm going to ask you real quick. So if other people contact us or contact you and they really want you to come and share your story, are you open to doing that in the Utah surrounding area, or?
Sure. Yeah. You know what? Send me a private message on Facebook Messenger. And then the one thing I'd just say is, I'm not muscle for hire. I have a life. I have a lot of things going on. The answer is not always going to be yes or yes right away. Like
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard when there's a lot of people asking, but feel free to ask, and I'd be more than willing to share. Like I said, within reason. Be kind to me. I'm not a business. I'm not trying to sell a book, so I have to do things at the right speed. But I'm comfortable with people reaching out.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, a big thank you again, Kaden, and thank you to our wonderful listeners for tuning in to another episode of Latter Day Lights. If you guys have enjoyed hearing all about Kaden's adventures, be sure to like, comment, and share his story from our Facebook page, okay?
Awesome. And thanks again, Kaden. And we look forward to getting this out there and sharing your light with other members of the church. And if any of you have a story that you'd like to share and get that out to the rest of the world through us, go to latterdaylights.com and fill out our form, and we will get you on the show. And hope to see you in the future. Thanks again. We'll see you later.